I fell in love with the driver and cheated on my husband in a borrowed bed. My son discovered me and, after that, my husband took a painful and irreversible revenge. My name is Mariana, I am 34 years old, and I am a primary school teacher at a private school. I met Alejandro, my husband, when I was still in college. He owns an urban transport fleet and, in everyone's eyes, he had that air of a successful, serious, and respected man. Today he is 42 years old and seems to have aged 20 years in the last 5. We married early and had a son 3 years later, Gabriel, the light of my life. Apparently, we had everything to be a stable and happy family, but behind the smiling Instagram photos and the Sunday lunches with my mother-in-law, there was a forgotten woman. And Alejandro was never violent, neither physically nor verbally, but his silence, his emotional absence, hurt more than shouts. He was always busy, taking care of business, taking care of the company, taking care of everything except me. When I talked about myself, he yawned. When I cried, he did not see it. When I got ready, he did not even notice. Little by little, I stopped dressing up, I stopped talking, I began to just exist, a simple, efficient shadow inside the house. To everyone, I was Alejandro's wife, as if my name had been swallowed by the role. My son was my only reason to get out of bed. Gabriel is 7 years old and is a sensitive and sweet child. He noticed before anyone else that I was sad. Sometimes he would hug me out of nowhere and tell me he loved me. Other times, he would draw me as a superhero with a cape. I was smiling on the outside, but inside I felt like a fraud. I was not strong, I was exhausted. I lost myself being everything to others and nothing to myself. The routine became a cell without locks because I no longer tried to escape. I started writing in an old notebook hidden in the desk drawer. I wrote in the early hours of the morning, when Alejandro was already asleep, facing the other way, with his cell phone still illuminating his face. Work messages, I thought. Maybe not, I do not know. I needed to organize my thoughts, I needed to understand how I got there. I felt like a guest in my own home, one who made coffee, washed the dishes, took her son to school, but was not seen, heard, or remembered. I was simply socially useful. My marriage was what all the other women envied. He is a hard worker. You are a very stable couple. You are lucky, Mariana. And I smiled, I always smiled, but inside everything was a shell, a varnish over the emptiness. I did not want luxury. I wanted a glance, a sincere affection, a "how are you?" a "come here, tell me how your day was." But I had not heard that from him in years. It had been so long that I did not even remember what it was like to be seen as a woman and not just as a mother, wife, or a role. Sometimes I would lie in bed and wonder if this was how all women felt after a while, if love really died slowly, suffocated between bills to pay and silent dinners. And one night I wrote in my diary, "Have you ever loved someone who forgot you, even though they still live with you?" That question kept pulsating in my head like an echo. I did not know that from that moment on, my life would begin to take a direction I could never have predicted. And it would all start with a smile that was not my husband's. Santiago came into our lives unassumingly. He was one of the new drivers for Alejandro's company, in charge of transporting the employees' children to schools and occasionally covering private routes when someone was absent. He was 38 years old, was married, had 2 teenage children, and a look that conveyed a silent melancholy. He was discreet, kind, and always opened the car door with a slight "good morning" that, curiously, seemed more sincere than any word I heard at home. The first time we exchanged whole sentences was on a random Tuesday. I arrived late, poorly dressed, with my hair tied up somehow, and he smiled. "Your hair looks good down like that," he said, looking through the rearview mirror as Gabriel sat in the back seat. It was not a joke, it was not vulgar, but it was as if someone had turned on a light bulb inside me. That simple compliment was spinning in my head all day. I spent the afternoon looking at my reflection in the school windows, trying to see what he saw. At home, I tied my hair up again. An absurd guilt washed over me for having smiled at that, but at the same time I felt alive for the first time in a long time. In the following days, the trips became more than just trips. I started leaving 5 minutes earlier just to have time to talk to Santiago before my son got on. He talked about simple things, the traffic, the weather, the music playing on the radio. And I listened to everything as if it were poetry. Sometimes he talked about his wife like someone talking about a roommate. We avoid each other, you know. And I knew. I knew exactly what he meant. Even without saying anything more, we understood each other in the silences. We started laughing together over silly things, quick jokes. One day, he asked me if I had ever read any book that was not a textbook and recommended a novel. I brought it back the next day with my name written on the inside cover. I read it in 2 days. On the third, he was waiting for me with a small folded piece of paper and an underlined passage. Some encounters are not coincidental. They are needs that life disguises as coincidence. That dismantled me. I do not know how to explain it, but I kept the paper. It is still in my diary to this day. And then came the flower, small, simple, stolen from some garden somewhere. A daisy wrapped in a napkin. "To see you smile," he said, a little embarrassed. My son saw it and laughed. "Uncle Santi brought a flower for Mom. And he is to decorate the car, but I think it looks better on her." I wanted to disappear. My face grew hot, as if I had done something unforgivable, but I did not return the flower and I did not throw it away. I hid it in the school planner. That day I entered the house and hugged Alejandro. He looked at me strangely, as if he did not know where I fit. He quickly let go of me and went to the bedroom. There were no kisses, no caresses, no promises yet, but at that moment Santiago was already inside my head, and I was inside his. We were two lonely people seeking refuge in the break from routine, two bodies that had not yet touched, but had already allowed themselves to desire. I tried not to think, but the flower dried inside the planner, and my heart began to beat for someone who was not mine. The path between right and wrong was already paved, and soon it would rain. A rain that would not let me get out of the car. Friday began like all the others, chaotic, suffocating, boring. I was exhausted. I forgot to sign a report card. I had a fight with a student who threw a paper at my head, and the coordinator told me I needed to smile more. At the end of the day, it started to rain. The heavy kind with thunder, wind, and a black sky. Santiago sent a message asking if I wanted a ride home. He would be nearby. I hesitated, but after seeing the downpour outside, I accepted. He arrived quickly, with the wipers failing and a song too old for a young radio station playing on the radio. On the way, we spoke little. The sound of the rain filled the space. When we took the avenue, the flood stopped us from passing. We were trapped inside the car, alone and silent. He sighed and said, with his forehead resting on the steering wheel, "Sometimes I want to disappear, leave everything, just go." I did not answer, but my eyes filled with water. That feeling of his was mine, the feeling of imprisonment, of suffocation, of being on life support within our own lives. It was the first time I let tears fall in front of him. Santiago looked at me and said in a low voice, "Do not cry, you do not deserve this kind of pain." He came closer and wiped my face with a crumpled napkin. It was a quick, respectful touch, but intimate in a way Alejandro had not been in years. I closed my eyes, and when I opened them, his face was close, very close. I could smell the cheap perfume mixed with the rain. Our gazes met as if asking permission for something that was already inevitable. I did not back away, neither did he. The kiss happened slowly, as if it were forbidden and sacred at the same time. It started with lips touching lightly, then it came stronger, with urgency, as if we had been waiting for that moment for lifetimes. It was hot, desperate, clumsy. The next thing I knew, my hand was on his chest and his was holding the back of my head. It was as if my body decided for me, but my mind screamed. I pushed, said, "I cannot." I got out of the car in the rain, tripping over my own legs, wet, ashamed, and alive. I arrived home soaked, trembling. Alejandro looked at me from a distance and asked, "Did you fall in the flood?" I just shook my head. I went straight to the shower. Under the hot water, I relived every second of that kiss. Guilt washed over me like poison. I told myself, it was just an impulse, a mistake, I am not that kind of woman. But the truth was that I was no longer. I had crossed a line, one that had no return. And I knew there would be more to come, because if he kissed me again, I would not say no. That night I did not sleep. I lay there with the pillow pressed against my chest, listening to my husband's breathing beside me as if he were a stranger. My head was pounding. And now what? But the answer was clear. What started as a flower now had a taste, had skin, had desire. And although I wanted to pretend it was possible to bury everything, something in me had already awakened. And the worst part, I liked being awake. The kiss was just the beginning, and I already knew that. Camila, my friend, was traveling that weekend and offered me her house so I could breathe a little. She said I could go there, be alone, rest. It was in this space of silence that the invitation occurred. I sent a short message to Santiago, come after 3 if you can. He replied in a matter of seconds. There were no questions. He arrived with a bottle of wine, 2 plastic cups, and a look that would not let me forget the kiss. Neither of us was there to pretend it was friendship. That was the next step. The house was silent. The furniture seemed to be watching us. He left his shoes at the door. I made some coffee just to have something in my hands. We sat for a few minutes on the living room sofa, not talking about anything, looking at everything. The tension was in the air, almost palpable. When he touched my hand, I did not flinch. The way he looked at me was not lustful, it was intense, like someone facing something they have wanted for a long time. And when he got closer, I closed my eyes. The kiss, this time, was longer, more real. There was no doubt. We went up to the room, a strange, neutral, and borrowed environment. He opened the bottle, poured the glasses, and set the wine aside. We approached slowly. When he hugged me, my body trembled. It was not just desire, it was accumulated loneliness, repressed anger, old need. I kissed him like someone seeking refuge. The clothes came off little by little, with silence between gestures. The bodies found each other without violence, but with urgency. It was more than physical, it was emotional, it was intense, uncomfortable, and human. During that moment, my thoughts came and went. In some seconds, I just felt it. In others, I saw my son's face. Guilt flowed along with the sweat. When it was all over, he held me for a while, but I could not stay there. I quickly got dressed, fixed my hair as best I could, and went downstairs in silence. Santiago tried to look me in the eyes. I looked away, not from him, from myself. I was not ready to face myself as the woman who cheated on her husband. But this woman already existed, it was me. I returned home at dusk. Gabriel came running, hugged me tightly, and, without thinking, asked me, "Mommy, what is that smell? Did you put on new perfume?" My heart raced. It was just a child's question, but I felt like he had seen everything. I muttered that I used Camila's cream. Alejandro looked from the kitchen. He said nothing, but his eyes stayed on me longer than usual. I went upstairs, took off my clothes, put them at the bottom of the basket, and stayed in the shower for 20 minutes. The water ran, but what I felt did not come out. That night I slept on the opposite side of the bed. Alejandro was snoring, my son dreamed in the next room, and I, with a heart full of mud, wrote in my diary, I gave in. I do not know if it was out of need, anger, or ego, but I gave in. And the worst part was not the act, the worst part was knowing that, despite the pain, a part of me wanted to do it again. I wanted more, as if the faded Mariana from before had been replaced by someone who, despite being wrong, felt alive. After the first time, nothing in me went back to normal. My body worked on autopilot, but my thoughts orbited around Santiago all the time. Every notification on my phone made my heart race. I relived what happened at Camila's house as if it were a new addiction. I started making excuses to leave the house, scheduling extra meetings at school, inventing that I needed to buy materials or help a colleague. Any excuse was valid if it led me to him. But Santiago was changing. He no longer responded to my messages as quickly. He started saying he was tired, that his children were demanding, that his wife was suspicious. I pretended to understand, but inside, anxiety was eating me up. I started dressing up more and posting discreet photos on Instagram, hoping he would comment on something. And sometimes he did, other times he ignored them. When we were together, he still touched me with desire, but there was something different, less heat, less urgency. I wanted more. He no longer seemed to want it as much. Meanwhile, Alejandro started leaving the house early. He started arriving when Gabriel was already asleep. I suspected he was cheating too. He found out and decided to take revenge on you in silence. I did not ask anything, I just watched. We started living like rented roommates. And worst of all, I started to forget about my own son. I missed 2 school meetings, I stopped signing a permission slip, and one day I did not realize he had a fever until the nanny told me. I was blind, addicted to a story that only existed in my head. Santiago started avoiding me on the trips. He sent other drivers in his place. One day I waited for him in the parking lot, as always. I saw him arrive with his wife in the passenger seat. They laughed, she took his hand. My stomach churned. I felt disgusted, angry, hurt, as if he had betrayed me, even though I was the other woman. I cried right there in the car seat with the door closed and the windows fogged up. I felt disposable, a hobby, a mistake. And more than anything, I felt pathetic. That night I went after him. I waited for his shift to end, and when he left, I called him. He got scared, looked around. He took me to the corner of the garage and said in a low voice, "What are you doing here?" I asked him why he was avoiding me. He sighed. "Why are you confusing things?" I said, "You used me." He replied without moving a muscle, "You knew from the beginning that you could not have me." And he left. He did not shout, he did not apologize, he was just gone. And I stood there, with wet eyes and a broken heart. I got home and locked myself in the bathroom. I looked at my reflection in the mirror and barely recognized myself. I was that woman I criticized in soap operas, the one who said, "How can someone abandon their child for a lover?" The one who judged. And now I was judgeable. I did not sleep. I sat on the cold floor and wondered how I got here. But even after everything, a part of me still hoped he would look for me, because deep down, I no longer knew who I was without him. That Saturday, Gabriel had asked to go to the snack bar where they sold animal-shaped fries. I wanted to say no, I was down, but the recent guilt for everything I had been doing made me give in. "Of course, son, just the 2 of us today, okay?" He smiled. I combed my hair, put on some basic clothes, and we left. The plan was a quick snack, fake laughter, and go back home. But, as always happens with those who try to hide an abyss, fate decided to give me a push. And it came in the form of a notification on your cell phone. It was Santiago. After weeks of being missing, he sent a simple, "I miss you." My heart raced and, without a second thought, I replied, "We are at the coffee shop, if you want to stop by." I thought he would refuse, but minutes later he walked through the door. He was wearing a simple navy blue t-shirt and had that smile on his face that disarmed me. Gabriel greeted excitedly, "Uncle Santi." I froze. I did not want the 2 of them to be in the same space, but I did not want him to leave either. So, I asked Gabriel to stay in the car playing with his cell phone while I sorted out a quick matter with his uncle. We left. We went to the side alley of the coffee shop, near the storage room. Santiago seemed nervous, looking around. I wanted to hug him. He pulled me by the waist and said he dreamed of me. He kissed me hastily, with nostalgia, as if the days without contact had turned into weeks. And I let him, there, in the middle of an alley that smelled of old fried food and exhaust fumes. I made another mistake. It was quick, a kiss, a touch, a whispered promise. And then I heard the voice, the only one that could not have been there at that moment. "Mommy?" Gabriel looked at us from the entrance of the alley. He was holding his cell phone, as if he did not know what to do with his hands. I moved away from Santiago at the same moment, as if I had been struck. The world spun. My son's face was a mixture of doubt, disappointment, and innocence. I walked towards him, knelt down, and all I could ask was, "Are you okay?" He replied, "Yes, but why did you kiss Uncle Santi?" My heart dropped to my stomach. There was no answer that could erase that. I said I would explain it at home later, but I knew the damage was already done. At that dinner, I tried to act as if nothing had happened. I prepared the rice that Alejandro liked. I made the beans thicker, as he preferred. I sat with the 2 of them at the table, pretending to be in control. But children do not know how to keep secrets. Gabriel, with that cruel naturalness that only little ones have, blurted out, Dad, Mom kissed Uncle Sanny today. The silence that fell was sepulchral. Alejandro did not ask, did not shout. He simply put down his cutlery, looked at me for 3 eternal seconds, and got up. He left the room. I did not say a word. I did not go after him. I did not have the strength. I just sat there, with the fork still in my hand and my face frozen. Gabriel chewed, not understanding the weight of what he had said. I tried to smile at him, but a tear fell without my permission. What was a secret was now a sentence. I was no longer in control. The truth, the one I tried to keep in drawers and delete messages of, was now on the table, between the beans and the grape juice. And no one was hungry anymore. I thought Alejandro was going to do what he always did, ignore it, pretend he did not see it, that he did not feel it, that he did not care. But no. For the first time in years, he reacted. And his reaction was silent and ruthless. Without telling me, he installed cameras in the car. He hid one under the passenger seat and another pointed at the rearview mirror. For days, he recorded everything. He did not fight, he did not sleep out, he did not change his routine. I just waited. Until one day, Santiago and I met again, inside the company car, with Gabriel in the back seat playing with his cell phone and with headphones in his ears. It was a mistake, a gigantic mistake. I leaned over, kissed Santiago quickly, whispered that I missed him, and he returned the gesture, as if it were not serious. Days later, Alejandro called me to the kitchen. He had my notebook open. He played a video without saying anything. It was the car recording, my voice, my kiss, my gaze, and in the background, my son laughing at a game on his cell phone, oblivious to what was happening there. I froze, tried to say something. He just closed the notebook and said, "You do not even deserve the right to apologize." He went upstairs and, once again, disappeared. But this time he would act. The next morning, the bomb exploded. I received messages, calls, and even group notifications. The video had been sent to family, friends, parents from school. Some even reposted it. There is no way she could have done that with her son in the car. A teacher and a mother on top of that. The judgment came quickly, cruel, and fierce. The school called me for an urgent meeting. The principal, always kind, looked at me coldly. "You have to step aside temporarily for the sake of the institution's image." I could not say anything, I just signed the paper. That same day, Alejandro changed his relationship status on social media to single, blocked my number. I told the secretary not to answer me. Gabriel was taken by him to spend a few days at his grandparents' house. And I stayed at home, alone, looking at my cell phone screen with the comments dripping like acid. "Despicable bitch. Poor boy." A mother at the school even tagged me with the caption, "If this were my son, she would be at the police station." And that is when I realized the hole I had dug myself into. The following week, I received a formal notification. I was being investigated for inappropriate conduct involving a minor, as I was taking my son to extramarital encounters with an employee of the company for which my husband was responsible. It was not yet a criminal charge, but the mere existence of that document made me feel as if I were being kicked out of my own life. I lost everything: respect, my job, my son, silence. Everything had been exposed, and the feeling was like being naked in the town square, with everyone pointing fingers. It was not the divorce that destroyed me, it was the critical gaze of the people who once smiled at me. It was knowing that my name was whispered in the hallways as an example of failure. It was seeing my son avoid me, seeing my husband treat me like a footnote in his life. And seeing Santiago, silent, invisible, as if he were not part of anything. And for the first time I understood, sometimes shame does not come with shouts, it comes with silence and the whole world watching, and nobody presses pause. Santiago disappeared. Just like that, after the video went viral and my life became a public garbage dump, he disappeared as if he had never existed. He resigned from the company the day after the exposure, without notice, without saying goodbye. Not a message, not even an "I am sorry." And I, like a fool, still tried to look for him. I sent texts, audios, called from an unknown number, all without a response. I was blocked on all social media. The last thing I saw was a photo posted by his wife, the two of them hugging, smiling. Caption: starting over with truth and dignity. The phrase shattered me as if it were all my fault, as if he had been an innocent pawn in a story that the two of you wrote with the same hands. But he moved on, I was left in the mud. Santiago continued as a restored family man. I became the woman to avoid in the supermarket aisles. It no longer mattered how much I cried, explained, or pleaded. He had made his choice, and the choice was to save his own image. He threw me to the lions and hid behind the shield of his hurt and forgiven wife. Alejandro, in turn, began the legal process for full custody of our son. He alleged emotional instability, undue exposure, inappropriate conduct. My lawyer tried to fight it, but the public pressure was too great. I was the adulterous mother who kissed the driver in front of her son. The words were in the petitions, in the whispers of relatives, in the eyes of the judges. Even with no record, no aggression, no history, I was put in a position of a threat to the child's stability. The final sentence was cruel, shared custody, but supervised visits for an indefinite time. Gabriel did not understand. He cried, asked to sleep with me. I could not. That is all for now, I said, but to this day I do not know how long the system thinks a mother should pay for a mistake. He began to look at me with a detachment I had never seen before. He stopped telling me about his drawings, his dreams, his fears. He became a more serious child. And I became the sketch of a mother, allowed at scheduled times, with the supervising gaze of a social worker. Nothing hurts as much as this. Losing Alejandro was a shock. Losing Santiago was a shock. But losing my son was death. Not physical, but emotional. I began to walk around the corners of the house as if it no longer belonged to me. The smiling photographs, previously scattered on the walls, were removed by him. My clothes were folded and put into suitcases. I had the guest room until I found a place. And nobody called me Mommy affectionately for weeks, not even Gabriel. Just, Mommy, can I go? Mommy, it is over, as if I were a visitor. And maybe I was. Abandonment, contrary to what they say, is not a moment, it is a process. It does not come shouting, it is a slow disappearance. First the touch, then the look, finally the name. And when I realized it, there was no one left to call me Mariana. I was just the traitor, the ex-wife, the supervised mother. And Santiago was just another ghost I let in. And now he was not even that. Today I listened to my son on the phone. His voice sounds distant, more mature than it should be. I ask him how school was, if he ate well, if he slept well. He answers softly, but without emotion, as if treating me like a teacher he respects, but does not love. With each call, I fight to hold back the tears until I hang up. I only break down after he says, "Goodbye, Mom," with that formal and automatic Mom, without scent, without a lap. The sound of the final ring is my new favorite silence, because it is the only place where I still hear him call me in some way. I spent months trying to understand what led me to Santiago, and the answer is not pretty. It was not love, it was a lack. It was a need to feel alive, to see myself in the mirror and know that someone was still noticing. I was so hungry to be seen that I accepted being swallowed. I traded what little I had left for crumbs of affection wrapped in a driver's perfume. I could have asked for help, I could have screamed for help before throwing myself into the arms of the mistake, but I preferred the easier, faster, and more expensive route. Today I pay with interest, with absence, with the loneliness that makes no noise, but screams all the time. I no longer see Alejandro, I no longer see Santiago, but what really hurts is not seeing Gabriel as before. The child who ran and jumped into my lap now offers me his hand cautiously, as if afraid of falling if he trusts too much. I would change everything, absolutely everything, for one afternoon on the couch with my son in slippers, watching cartoons. But I no longer have that right. I lost it with my own choices. The worst part is that people think punishing me is not letting me work, not letting me see my son without an appointment. But the greatest punishment is emotional. It is when your own reflection starts to look at you with contempt. It is when you wake up and realize you have no one to say good morning to. That is when you forget what it is like to be hugged without commitment. I have no one else. I do not even have the courage to truly apologize, because I know the damage was too great, and I no longer know if "I am sorry" is good for anything. Time passed, and it heals some things, but it also reveals others. I do not want another man, I do not want revenge, I do not want Alejandro back. I just wanted my son to look at me like he used to look at me again, to call me with joy again, for your drawings to make me a superhero again. But now I am the villain, the one responsible for breaking what he knew as home. And no matter how much guilt I drag, no one will take my hand. Neither will he. I end this rant with the phrase that shatters me every time I repeat it, because it is true, because it haunts me. He saw me. It was not Alejandro, it was not Santiago, it was Gabriel. He saw me, he caught me, do you understand? And he never looked at me the same way again.